So the truth is like just because you have a to-do list doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to be getting things done, especially when you just continuously add things to the list. This used to be the story of my life. I would write things down. I would start doing completely different things that were not on the list that I just wrote down. But then I would write what I did down just to get the satisfaction of crossing things out, which is just like counterproductive. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of the Everyday Magic Podcast. I'm your host, Mattie James. Today we are talking about something that I just love making sure I use every single day, and that's the to-do list. And specifically, I want to talk about how to use your to-do list to get more of what matters done with less stress. The whole point of having a to-do list is to not only get things done, but to get it done with less stress. Because I'll be honest with you, your to-do list can actually cause more harm than help when you're not using it in the right way. So let's break that down and talk about it. So the truth is like just because you have a to-do list doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to be getting things done, especially when you just continuously add things to the list. This used to be the story of my life. I would write things down. I would start doing completely different things that were not on the list that I just wrote down. But then I would write what I did down just to get the satisfaction of crossing things out, which is just like counterproductive. Because by the end of it, now you have this laundry list of things that weren't even originally written down, but the things that you did write down didn't get done, And so what I want to talk about is first and foremost what a to-do list actually is, because we want to make sure that we understand that. A to-do list is simply a list of items that need to get done, a list of tasks that you need to do. And the goal is to pretty much do those things within the day. Right? There's obviously several types of lists, and we'll get into that in a minute. But what I realized is that because I have so many different things going on, and with my life overlapping each other, pretty much like my work life and my personal life, making sure that I write things down simply so I can have less anxiety and actually remember things really does help. Now, one thing that I get DMs about, emails about, all the time is how overwhelmed so many women feel, right? We all have to go to work. We all are, navigating and managing our households as best as we can. We are raising our families and we are showing up for our friends and ourselves. And there's just a lot to remember. There's just a lot going on. And that's why a to-do list can be so helpful. Like throughout the week, you just have so many things going on. In fact, studies show that the average person has about 15 different projects going on. And I don't know about you, but that definitely feels like what is going on right now. And so just simply writing things down, capturing it so you don't have to rely on your memory or your mental bandwidth, if we're being completely honest, and kind of just freeing up that space is huge. Y'all know what I say all the time. I'm not interested in holding myself captive, because I'm trying to remember everything. Do not hold yourself captive by trying to remember everything. List it out, write it down, and free up those tabs in your head, because every single time you write something down, what happens? You close the tabs in your head. Here's why to-do lists work. They help us maintain awareness of what we have to do, which keeps us clear and focused. And in turn, that increases our likelihood of actually getting things done. So if you're aware, if you're clear, if you're focused, you're just more likely to get things done. Let's break it down even further. First and foremost, it just helps you prioritize things. It helps you begin a plan for your day or for your week or for a particular project. It definitely helps you to have less anxiety and less stress, which I can always use. I'm sure you feel the same way too. It absolutely helps with your memory because you don't have to try to remember things on your own. You can simply reference your list as well. It's definitely going to help you manage your time and manage your tasks a lot better. I'm not really a huge believer of time management. We've talked about that before. I think you can maximize your time, but you can certainly manage your tasks, especially when you're utilizing your to-do list. But one of my favorite things about a to-do list, and I think this really does go for everybody, is that it gives you a sense of accomplishment. I mean, when you check something off or cross it off your list, it just feels good. And of course, it really does help us keep things in perspective. To me, it just simply is a reminder of what actually matters and how we should use our time to get what matters done. So, how do you make a to-do list? Does the to-do list need to be analog? Do you need to write it down, or should it be digital? How often should you make a to-do list? Do you need to have one huge long laundry list and just pull from there? Or should you focus on having short, micro, and focus lists? We're going to break that all down in this episode. By the end of this episode, you're really going to understand how to use your to-do list to get more of what matters done with less stress. Let's get into it. Here's why I love to-do lists, because it really does help me to remember and to stay aware of all the things that we have going on. And this is something I learned from Mommy. Growing up, Mommy would always say that her to-do list was her brains. And what I really love about how she approached this is that this was literally a daily habit that I saw my mom use for decades. And so early on, she would definitely have like a dedicated notebook where she could write all her lists down. And I really also thought that that was cool, that she had this like notebook, this like thing that she could reference over and over again about what she had to do for the day. But what I also loved is that if she didn't have a notebook, or maybe the pages ran out, or maybe it wasn't near her, she would literally rip off like a piece of a cardboard box. She would rip a piece of paper out of another notebook, but she would always have a list with her, and she would put it in her purse. That way she could always reference back to it. And so that's something that I saw as a child. It's something that I saw as a teenager. It's something that I saw once I became an adult. And still to this day, because mom and dad live down the street, I watch mommy write her brains every single day. And she actually is so efficient. She gets so much done. And I really do admire that about her. She's really productive in a really purposeful way. And it is everything from super simple tasks like touching base or giving somebody a call to super complex tasks like, maybe like filling out a form, renewing your passport or anything of that nature. But I really respected it because it really was an example of like, hey, when you write something down, when you plan to do something, you can actually get it done because you've listed it, and you don't have to have the superpower of remembering it. To me, the superpower was knowing that you needed a list to get something done well. So I talk about this all the time with the Amor members in our community, and I talk about how we have got to be so intentional about managing our time, right? And really maximizing our time, our energy, and our attention. And I think what happens is like when we don't make a to-do list, what happens is our attention is focused on what's stored in our head. And y'all, I just cannot emphasize it enough. You have got to make sure you are freeing up your attention, because that is literally what you're fighting for every single second, minute, and hour of the day. You are fighting for your own attention from email, from social media notifications, from what the kids got going on, from what your husband has going on, from what your friends got going on. And so you want to make sure that you're managing your attention intentionally in a super deliberate way by saying, hey, let me list these things out, and this is what I'm going to focus my attention on for the next 3, 4, 6 hours throughout my workday or throughout the day in general, because I have a lot going on. I know you have a lot going on. You are out here doing it. You are out here going to work, making sure you are doing the thing at work, whether you are a freelancer, whether you are in corporate, or whether you have your own business. You are doing the thing at home, making sure that the home is together. It is running as smoothly as possible in the current season that you're in. You're making sure that you're showing up fully as a partner in your marriage. You're making sure that you're showing up fully for your kids as their mom, and you're still showing up as a friend and showing up taking care of yourself. You're really doing a lot. And so doing a lot requires managing that in a really deliberate and effective way. And the best way to do that is by writing things down. You don't have to remember it. You just need to make sure that you know that you need to get it done and reference it. And that's why a to-do list is so effective. It's literally what I swear by every single day. If I don't have my to-do list notebook or my planner near me, I will take a scrap piece of paper. It is not above me. I don't care if I have to rip up a Kleenex box to make sure I have a surface to write on, I will do that, or I'll jot it in my notes app on my phone. So let's talk about what are the best ways to approach your to-do list so you actually get things that matter to you done. The one rule I swear by, and I talk about it in the book often, is capture now, reference later. You can even think about this as capture first, reference later. Now, one thing I want to encourage you to do is anytime you think about something that needs to be done, and it might not necessarily need to be done right now in the present tense, is you need to write it down. Capture that immediately. Figure out whatever kind of system you need. It doesn't have to be this super tedious system, right? But I do want to encourage you to capture. I always have all the ideas in the shower. I think about the things that I need to do, right? Whether it's for work, whether it's for the kids' field trip coming up, whether it's for spring break that's coming up. I start thinking about all these things in the shower. And I think that oftentimes we think about the things that matter when we have a lot of idle time. When you allow your brain to just freely be and to just be clear and not do anything, guess what? You start thinking about the things that actually matter and all the things you actually want to get done. And so I really want to encourage you to come up with some kind of capture system, whether it's referencing a capture note in your notes app, whether it's Post-its on your nightstand or in your bathroom whenever you think about something, or in your dining room or in your kitchen. I like to have just something to jot down notes with on my kitchen island, because I just think about things when I'm washing dishes, when I'm cooking, and I want to be able to remember what I'm thinking of. Anytime we tell ourselves that we are going to remember something, girl, it's a lie. It just is, right? And I feel this way not only about to-dos, I think about this with creative ideas as well that you want to execute, right? Whether it's a YouTube idea, a podcast idea. So anytime something comes to my head, I want to capture it as purely, I want it to be potent when I capture it. So when I come back to reference it, I don't have to wonder what my mind was going to. And it doesn't even have to be a full out complete thought per se. It just needs to be enough where you can capture that intel so you can reference later. So once you capture and you can reference later, that later is your thinking time. We talked about this during the morning episode, the Magic Morning Routine episode. If you haven't checked out that episode, I'll definitely make sure that I link it so you can listen to it. But one thing I swear by in the morning when it comes to my day-to-day is making sure that I have some kind of thinking time. 5 minutes, just quiet, uninterrupted. Sometimes I'll have to do it in my bedroom. Sometimes I can do it at the kitchen island when people are at school, or sometimes I can just even come down here to my office. I just need a little bit of thinking time to make sure that I'm clear on what I have going on and make sure that list is still in alignment with what I had planned to do. Thinking time is so valuable, and it doesn't have to be long to be valuable. I think when people hear thinking time or CEO time or executive time, whatever phrase you want to reference to this uninterrupted time to think, we think that the only way we should actually schedule it or actually utilize it if it is super long. And I'll tell you what, 5 minutes of uninterrupted thinking time can set you up for success more than you think. And guess what? If you do that every day of the week, that's 35 minutes of you thinking uninterrupted. That's super valuable. And a lot of times it's a lot more than what we get when we don't schedule or prioritize it. So whenever I have thinking time, I certainly like to review my list, because we'll talk about making your list the night before. But then I also like to review whatever I've captured and see if it's relevant to my current list of to-dos for the day, so I can make sure that I'm in alignment with what I want to get done in this particular season. Okay, so I know a lot of people have questions. Well, Mattie, is writing analog, writing it physically better? Is digital better? Honestly, it's about your preference. Here's what I will say. I think you want to pick whatever you will keep up with, right? So I know there are so many incredible to-do list apps. You can use all the things. You can use Asana. You can use Trello. You can use, I think there is one just called To-Do List. Or Todoist. There's all these different apps that you can use, right? For me, I like a hybrid of my notes app and writing my to-do list physically. For me, there's something about the muscle memory that I just love. When I write something down physically, I am more likely to actually remember it. It actually becomes like etched in my brain when I write it down. Now, sometimes I don't necessarily have the liberty of grabbing a pen, grabbing my notebook, or grabbing a piece of paper and writing it down, right? Maybe I'm on location for shooting a brand partnership or doing a TV segment, or maybe I'm traveling with Chris and the kids, and I can't necessarily do that. And so that's when I will create a reference later, right? And I'll put the date in my notes app and I'll write down what I'm thinking about, right? And then when I have thinking time the next day or the next couple of days, I will reference back to my notes app. I pretty much have just made a habit of opening up my notes app, reviewing it to see if there's anything that I need to reference because I captured it a few days earlier. So when it comes to whether it needs to be digital or analog, it just comes down to your preference. It comes down to your lifestyle, how you navigating your day to day, right? For somebody who works, a corporate gig and has to go into the office, maybe they just prefer to write in their planner, to write in a specific notebook what they have going on. And at home, because you not only live at home, but maybe you work from home too, you work remotely, maybe it's just easier for you to capture things in your phone because you're moving throughout the house, and you're working on a laptop every single day. I think it's just about picking what works for you. Okay. So the other thing I want to talk about when it comes to capture is you want to list first and then plan later. So what this means is just list everything out. Just dump everything that's in your brain and get it on paper, right? Then you can start to plan or definitely prepare what's on your list a little bit more. You can definitely start to assign it to a specific day or even a specific time. And if you need somebody else to help you do it, you can delegate it to them as well. But until you list everything out and see what fully needs to get done, you won't be able to effectively plan. So when it comes to capturing your to-dos, make sure you list first and then plan. Whenever you're listing, the other thing I want to make sure that I encourage you to do is to make sure you write verbs first and then details later. A lot of times we'll just write down, 3 Canva images, right? Or, blankets for the kid sleepover, right? And it's like, okay, but what about that, right? We're just kind of writing these incomplete thoughts. So if you need to design 3 Canva templates, make sure you start the task out with the word design. If you need to fold or organize, the sleeping bags from the kids' sleepover, make sure you write organize or put away or return. So there's a clear verb associated with what you need to get done. Here's why I love making sure that I'm using verbs first and then details later. One, it just forces you to be a lot more clear and focused about what actually has to get done. A lot of times we like to get in our head and get in our feelings about what must get done. And a lot of times it's just really an action that needs to be taken. Now, whether or not you feel like taking that action is definitely depending on the week of your cycle, how much other stuff you have going on and whether or not you have help, right? And just whether or not you actually like doing that task. But regardless of all of that, at the end of the day, if that just needs to be done and it needs to be done at a certain time, we just need to make sure that we're leading with the verb, the action, then the little details like, okay, what is it that you're doing and then why? And then when does it need to be done can then be identified or, just decided. For me, this creates clarity with my to-do list. So that way, if I actually needed somebody to kind of step in, maybe because I need to work longer, I can pass this along to Chris. I can pass this along to Mesa. I can pass this along to somebody on my team and be like, can you knock these things out? And so now, because I led with the verb first, they don't really have to do a lot of guessing. Maybe I need to point them in the direction of what software to use or what resource to use. But besides that, the to-do is super clear because I led with the verb first and then got into the details later. Okay, so with your to-do list, you want to capture now, reference later. Now, you want to slay your day. So when it comes to your to-do list, I think one of the biggest mistakes we all make is that we turn it into a laundry list. This daily to-do list does not need to be long. It just doesn't. You're not finna do 14 things today. Not like 14 listed things. And I'll talk about this too, because I wanted to make sure that I touched on this. There are certain things you don't need to list. The things you don't need to list are micro and routine tasks. So tasks that are super micro, that take you anywhere between 1 to 2 minutes, you don't really need to list that out, right? Like washing a piece of fruit. If you're not washing all of the fruit at once and prepping them for the week, you don't necessarily need to write down like, wash this fruit, because that's just already something that's so routine. Anytime you eat fruit, you need to wash it. And also, it's going to take you less than 2 minutes to do it. So when it comes to micro tasks, make sure you're not writing that down simply to give yourself credit. And plus, you want to leave space on your list for what actually matters. Yes, washing your apple before you eat it matters, but in the grand scope of your productivity, it doesn't really. Routine tasks like taking out the trash, for most of us, taking out the trash and making sure it's out there on trash day is not really a task that you need to list, right? Because it's something that you do every single week. For us, that trash is getting picked up every Friday. I don't need to write down, take out the trash every Thursday, simply because it's just part of our schedule and part of our routine that needs to be done. Now, maybe I can set a reminder, but that doesn't need to be taking up space on my to-do list. So setting up a regular reminder on your Google Calendar or even on your phone can be something that you use for a routine task, just so you don't forget, but it doesn't need to be taking up real estate on your to-do list. When it comes to your to-do list, you really want to reserve that for macro tasks. So tasks that are going to take you 3 minutes or more. They're not necessarily associated to a specific schedule. Yes, it might have a deadline, but it's not associated with a specific schedule or routine in your everyday life. You want to write those down. Those are the things you want to remember. You also want to write down macro tasks. Again, tasks that take longer than 3 minutes that are associated with a particular priority or project, right? Whether you want to list things out based on priority or project is up to you. What I have found is that whenever I make a to-do list, if it's for work, I'm usually associating it with a project. When it's for life, I'm associating it with a priority. That's just typically how I approach the everyday magic of my life, but you can do whatever works best for you. And I think that's really important for us to be explicitly honest with ourselves about. So when it comes to slaying your day, right? First of all, I love slay your day. First of all, because it rhymes. Y'all know I love a saying, an acronym, alliteration. But for me, it really goes back to David is my favorite character in the Bible. And I just think about that David and Goliath story, which has meant so much to me in so many different ways in the different seasons of my life. But for me, I'm like, if David took down Goliath and he only had 5 stones, he didn't even need all 5. But he just had 5 just in case, because Goliath was giving 9 feet. And for me, that's the same thing. I think that we should have no more than 5 tasks on our to-do list every single day. So that to me is how you slay your day. No more than 5 tasks, right? If you're really focused, you could really have a super productive day with a really deeply meaningful and focused one task. That very seldom happens. However, it's still a way to be productive. And also, let me encourage you with this. Slaying your day doesn't mean that you got a lot done in a short amount of time. Slaying your day means you got what mattered done in a really efficient way. And I think that's the difference of true productivity. A lot of times we're thinking about quantity, but I really want us to be focused on quality. The reason why I harp on 3 to 5 tasks is because it is so much better for you to get 3 tasks done at 100% than 12 tasks done at 10%. And what often happens is that we're so focused on starting so many things instead of finishing them. And really the whole point of your to-do list is for you to talk about and list out what you're going to finish within your day. I also love the phrase, David, you're Goliath. And for me, that really means like getting that really hard thing done by lunchtime. If you can get whatever that super hard task, I'm talking about the task that would make you cuss in front of your mom. And you would just be like, Mama, this is just how I feel about this particular task. This is what I'm talking about. That super hard task that would make you cuss, get it done by 12 p.m. noon, if you can help it. Let's be honest. Everything is nuanced. Everything has context. Some days you're going to have some really super hard things you're going to have to do at 6 p.m., right? And maybe you didn't even list it down, but life just happened. But if you can help it, If you wrote down a really hard task and you can control getting it done earlier than later, I can't encourage you to do it enough, because before noon, you're going to have a lot more energy. You're going to have a lot more mental bandwidth and even the emotional capacity to get it done. So whatever you can do to get hard things done by noon, I encourage you to do that. Of course, if you have to get it done afternoon, still David or Goliath, the thing that makes it really incredible and gives you space to actually get that really hard thing done is because you don't have a list of 14, 16, 20 things to do for the day. You've kept it 5 tasks or less, and you're going to be able to get things done at 100% in a much more and meaningful way whenever you do this. And at the end of the day, when it comes to your productivity and writing your to-do list, the thing I want you to remember is that you are not a machine. You may be productive, but this does not mean you need to run yourself into the ground for the sake of productivity. This isn't about productivity winning. This is about you actually enjoying your life because you did the things you said you were going to do, and the things you said you were going to do actually mattered because you took the time to sit out and think about it. Last but not least, when it comes to your to-do list, you want to make it magic. I mean, let's face it, that's why we're all here, okay? So first and foremost, you want to make it meaningful. Let's focus on the things that matter. Here's one of the best ways you can make it meaningful. I think one thing that's really helpful is whenever you can just brain dump everything that matters in that week that you must get done, and then creating daily to-do lists based off of the deadlines or your schedule in that way. And so anytime I just brain dump what I have to do for the week and then pull from the weekly to-do list to start to shape my daily to-dos, and then I can then put it in my planner, put things in Google Calendar because I can assign times and stuff like that it just makes life easier. It just makes life easier. So brain dump what matters onto one piece of paper, right? Just list it out. It don't even have to be pretty. If you want it to be pretty, knock yourself out. But it don't have to be pretty. Just brain dump what matters for the week and then start to divvy it up and delegate it for day to day. How do you make your to-do list magic? How do you make it aesthetically pleasing? Well, just figure out whether you want to do it digital or whether you want to do it analog, and then make it an enjoyable process for you. If you know you are going to be committed to writing your to-do list, have a designated notebook. Get yourself a little designated pen and have at it. But also, you don't have to be married to that, right? You can also make a to-do list on random pieces of paper that you know you'll keep up with because you'll have it in your purse or you'll have it in your pocket or whatever have you, and just make sure you're maybe playing some kind of music that helps you think. It's really about making things enjoyable when it comes down to making something aesthetically pleasing. If you're more of a digital type of lister and planner, then find an app that just works for you. Like I said, there are so many options out there. Just find which one works best for you. The great thing about finding a digital to-do list app is that a lot of times they will provide a trial. So try it out for a week. See if you actually stick with it. See if the notifications work for you and if you prefer using it on desktop or your phone. But what I do like is that the digital options do allow both mobile and desktop, so you don't necessarily lose your list. How do you make it goal-oriented? How do you make your to-do list goal-oriented? Well, you want to make sure that you slay your day. Do not have more than 5 tasks on your to-do list. Now, of course, you're going to do more than 5 things throughout your day, right? But we're not going to write down micro or routine tasks just because they're pretty much already embedded in your life, right? You can set a reminder, but don't allow it to take up your to-do list real estate. Save that for macro tasks that are attached to a priority or a project. How do you make your to-do list intentional? You make sure that you write down verbs first and then details later. So don't just randomly write 3 Canva, social media templates, right? If you want to design that, or even if you want to delegate that to somebody on your team, or, you have to write down, school lunch for the field trip. Well, what do you want to do with that? Do you want to plan it? Do you want to pack it? You want to make sure that you're getting super clear on what the action is. So when you look at your list, you can pretty much just go into autopilot and instead of having to decide what the action is. Last but not least, and this is what I really want to talk about, is how to make your to-do list consistent. 5 to 10 minutes in the evening. So whenever you can get like that steady moment in the evening, Just make sure you adjust your to-do list for the next day in the evening before. The reason why you want to do this is because sometimes you'll write a to-do list, right? So you might have 4 tasks on your to-do list today, and guess what? You might only get 2 done, but they must be done in a timely fashion. So you move the 2 that you didn't get done today over to tomorrow's list. Well, if tomorrow's list had 4 items and you move over 2, guess what happens now? Now you have 6 items on your list. And so you at least need to remove 1 to make sure that you are slaying your day and that you honor yourself as a human being and not a machine, and stress yourself out. Because the whole point of this is to get stuff done, but with less stress, less anxiety, less overwhelm. So make sure you're reviewing what your to-do list is for the next day, the night before. And then in the morning, with thinking time, you can just do a quick review because you actually already know. And what is also really great about creating your list or adjusting your list the night before is that it allows you to set a clear expectation with what the day has. I think one thing that does cause some overwhelm and anxiety is like when you wake up and you're like, I know I have stuff to do. I don't know what it is. And you're starting to tell yourself the lie that it's a lot. And it's like, it actually isn't too much. It's just that you didn't know what it was. So reviewing it both the night before and the morning of can really just help you stay aware of what you have to do. And when you stay aware of it, it allows you to be both clear and focused. And when you're clear and focused, you're likely to get things done. So that does it for this episode. When it comes to using your to-do list to get more of what matters done, you want to make sure that you capture now and reference later. Brain dump everything you got to do for the week, assign it to days and even times if you need to. Make sure that you are listing first, then planning, writing those verbs down. Make sure you're slaying your day and keeping those tasks to 3 to 5 tasks a day. Honestly, that is more than enough. And then last but not least, make sure you make it magic. I mean, after all, that is why we're here. And that does it for today's episode, you guys. I hope it helped you. Do me a huge favor and send this episode over to one friend who you know could use this, especially because they've been trying to get a little bit more organized and productive. I would really appreciate it. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the podcast everywhere or anywhere that you can get podcasts. And if you haven't already, rate and review the podcast because it helps new people find and listen to the podcast. All right, y'all. I will see you in the next episode. Bye.